Hi, my name is David Bowling, and this is my wife Connie. And I'd like to take a few minutes to share with you a few ministries that has touched our life and has meant a lot to us in First Assembly. First of all, I've been going to First Assembly pretty much my whole life, and my wife and I, we've been married 21 years and have been calling this church our home since we've been married. You know, I think back when I was growing up and going to this church, you know, I came from a troubled home and had an abusive father, and you know, I felt love here in the arms of people at church here. This is where I really wanted to come and kind of get away from the things at home. And I remember back a youth pastor named Rick White who really just took time and was there for me as I was going through some of the things, and he just listened and meant a lot to me and just made me the man I am today. You know, and then those same two ministries now are touching our children. My son Matthew is involved into the children's church ministry, who I think is one of the best any church out there that has to offer. And then my daughter Paige, who is in the youth ministry, who's involved. And you know, both of those ministries I see now are touching the lives of my children. You know, another ministry that's meant a lot to me and my wife is the young married couple class. You know, Pastor Bob and Terry have been teaching that class for many years. And as I mentioned earlier, I came from a broken home, and so did my wife. So we didn't have very many role models growing up on what a married couple should look like. So over the years, we've been part of that class, and they've meant so much to us, teaching us, you know, how to grow and how to be a loving couple to each other. And not only through their teachings, but the great example that Bob and Terry have been to us. You know, then the women's ministry. You know, after my wife and I had been married for a couple of years, you know, we decided to have a child, and you know, there was complications there. And it was a trying time for us, but we just prayed about it and trusted in God that His will would be done in our life. And you know, the women's ministry was there for my wife. They comforted her, they listened to her. You know, so I'm sure some of them cried together. But I think back, there was a trip that all the women went on as a group, and they went to a church that was having revival. And there, the women got together, and they just had a great night of praise and worship, and prayed about, you know, what we were going through as a couple. And I'm happy to say a couple days later, when my wife returned, we found out she was pregnant and expecting our first child, Paige. So that ministry just meant a lot to us as we were going through them tough times. You know, also the men's ministry. As I mentioned a couple times, I did come from a broken home and didn't have that role model of a father at home. You know, the last few years of being in touch with the men's ministry, and there was one time we decided to go through the devotional of the courageous, and just having the role models there, and us being able to be open and honest with each other, and having men really share their testimonies and what they're going through at home with raising children was a great example for me, and just challenged me to step up and be the dad that God has called me to be. And lastly, salvation. You know, the most important thing as a church is, you know, growing the kingdom of God. You know, and I was saved at this church at a young age, over 20 years ago, and I was happy to see that my wife became saved at this church, and now my son and my daughter both got saved at First Assembly, and we're proud to call this church our home.